2023, in North Philadelphia, a single moment would forever change the lives of those who knew her. A mother, a businesswoman, and a woman of deep faith, Tiffany Wade was taken from this world in the most violent and tragic of ways. It was a death that shattered her family, leaving behind children, a community, and friends who will never forget the woman she was, and the life she had worked so hard to build. This was not just the loss of a mother, but the loss of someone who had touched so many lives with kindness, strength, and ambition. But who could do this to someone like Tiffany? And why? Today, we will uncover the painful truths behind the tragedy that struck Tiffany Wade's life. Before we dive deeper into today's chilling case, we want to take a moment to engage with you, our viewers. If you find our stories impactful and want to help support the growth of our channel, please take a second to subscribe. Subscribing ensures that you're always updated with our latest content, and it helps us reach a larger audience, allowing us to continue bringing you fresh crime stories and detailed analyses every day. We genuinely value your thoughts, so feel free to leave your comments below. Share your views on this case, and don't forget to tell us where you're watching from. It's always fascinating to see how far our stories reach. By liking, sharing, and commenting on our videos, you play an essential role in expanding this community and raising awareness. Your participation makes a difference. Thank you for being part of this journey. Now, let's continue with the story. Tiffany Wade was not just a mother, she was a force. A woman whose drive and ambition shaped every facet of her life. Growing up in Pennsylvania, Tiffany had always dreamed big, determined to carve out a future that would make a difference not only for herself but for her family. By the time she was just 20 years old, she had already achieved something remarkable, becoming a registered nurse. She was the youngest person to graduate from Methodist Hospital's nursing school, a testament to her dedication and work ethic. While many people at that age were still trying to figure out their career paths, Tiffany was already well on her way to building an impressive and diverse career. She didn't stop at nursing. Tiffany's entrepreneurial spirit took flight as she expanded into other ventures. From a hair salon to a catering business, she built an empire of small businesses, each one a testament to her incredible work ethic and ability to juggle multiple roles. She was a mother of 4, a daughter, and a businesswoman, managing it all with grace. She was constantly seeking new opportunities, and when she ventured into the world of CBD and hemp, it was just another example of her ability to innovate and stay ahead of the curve. Her business acumen was unmatched, and her name, Kisses, was a symbol of her personal brand, used across different businesses that she ran. But for Tiffany, success was not just about money or achievements. It was about family. She worked tirelessly to provide for her children, ensuring they had everything they needed. But above all, she made sure they always knew they were loved. Tiffany's relationship with her family was at the core of everything she did. She was fiercely protective of her children, always working to give them the best life she could offer. And the love she had for her father was a bond that ran deep. Tiffany would often surprise him with extravagant gestures, showing just how much she cared for him. One such moment, just weeks before her death, captured the depth of her generosity. Tiffany gave her father $110,000, a sum that spoke volumes about her selflessness and devotion to those she loved most. She wasn't just a businesswoman, Tiffany was a woman of heart, always giving back to the people who meant the most to her. Her generosity was not defined by the size of her wealth, but by the depth of her care and her willingness to share whatever she had. Her father, who had always supported her, was the recipient of this incredible gift, a reflection of the love they shared and the bond they had nurtured over the years. In addition to her family and businesses, Tiffany's faith played a central role in her life. A deeply devout Muslim, she practiced her religion with reverence and grace, always striving to live in a way that reflected her beliefs. Whether it was dressing modestly, visiting places like Dubai to reconnect with her faith, or mentoring others in understanding the Quran, Tiffany's devotion was clear. She wasn't just a woman of success, she was a woman of principle and humility. Tiffany's faith wasn't just something she practiced privately, it was a cornerstone of her identity. She used her platform and her success to uplift others, sharing her knowledge and experiences with those who sought guidance. She had a rare ability to blend her ambition with a profound sense of humility, a quality that drew people to her and made them want to be better themselves. Behind every success story lies complexity. And for Tiffany Wade, one of the most challenging aspects of her life was her troubled marriage. A woman of deep faith, devotion, and ambition, Tiffany stood by her husband, Armand Hilton, a man whose criminal past would ultimately cast a dark shadow over her life. Armand, also known by the nickname Speedy, had a long history of violent crime, one that began long before he crossed paths with Tiffany. It wasn't just his actions but his history, his reputation, and the baggage that came with him that would cause their world to unravel. Armand Hilton wasn't just any man, he had a history that raised red flags from the start. In 2002, he was involved in a violent kidnapping, a crime that made headlines. Armand, along with two others, had kidnapped a 17-year-old boy outside a store, demanding a $50,000 ransom. The boy's family feared for his life, and the situation could have ended in tragedy. Thankfully, the victim managed to escape, and Armand, along with his accomplices, was caught. They faced charges of kidnapping, robbery, and aggravated assault, charges that painted Armand as a dangerous individual with little regard for the law or human life. Despite this violent past, Tiffany remained by his side. For many, it would have been a clear red flag, a sign that it was time to move on. But Tiffany, the compassionate woman she was, continued to support him through thick and thin. She believed in second chances, and she hoped that maybe, just maybe, Armand could change. However, it wasn't just Armand's criminal past that made their marriage turbulent, it was his pattern of behavior. Even after his release from prison, Armand seemed unable or unwilling to escape his old ways. He became involved in shady real estate dealings, and soon, Tiffany found herself entangled in a web of legal risks. Though she had always trusted Armand, she began to realize that his decisions were putting everything she had worked for in jeopardy. She was now a successful businesswoman, with multiple ventures and a growing family, and the last thing she wanted was to be pulled into illegal activities. Tiffany's professional and personal lives were increasingly at odds with Armand's choices. Their marriage, once built on love, was now strained by his criminal ties and her fear of the future. Tiffany's trust in him was eroding, and with each passing day, the sense of danger loomed larger. For a while, she stood by him, hoping for change, but the weight of the situation was growing unbearable. No one could have predicted that the breaking point would come with Armand's incarceration. When Armand was sent back to prison, Tiffany finally made the decision that would forever change her life. She filed for divorce, a decision that was not taken lightly. But in the end, Tiffany knew it was the only choice for her and her children. No longer willing to stay in a toxic, dangerous environment, she chose to move on and create a life where she could thrive. It was a bold move, and a painful one, but it was the right one. For Tiffany, the divorce wasn't just the end of a marriage, it was the closing of a chapter marked by betrayal, fear, and a growing sense of loss. She had invested so much of herself into trying to make things work. She had put her trust, her love, and her faith into someone who, despite his promises, could never fully escape his past. The emotional strain was immense, but Tiffany's resilience shone through. She was a mother first, determined to protect her children from a man who had shown that he was willing to destroy everything. Though Armand's criminal past was never something Tiffany openly discussed, the cracks in their relationship had been there all along. As she filed for divorce, she took a stand, one that would forever change the course of her life. But what Tiffany didn't know was that the storm was far from over. Armand's anger, resentment, and bitterness were just beginning to take form, and the worst was yet to come. After Armand's imprisonment, Tiffany made a difficult but necessary decision, to reclaim her life. She had tried, time and time again, to make the marriage work. But now, with her future uncertain and her children's well-being at stake, Tiffany made the brave choice to move forward. She filed for divorce, determined to protect herself and her family from a man whose past continued to haunt them. Her decision wasn't just about leaving behind a toxic marriage, it was about rebuilding her life, focusing on her children, her businesses, and her personal growth. Tiffany remarried, finding love and support in a new relationship. But for Armand, this move was seen as a betrayal. His anger, once simmering beneath the surface, began to boil over. While behind bars, Armand's frustration reached new heights. His sense of entitlement over Tiffany's life and decisions was clear. In a recorded phone call, Tiffany captured the raw fury of a man consumed by resentment. Armand's voice, filled with venom, echoed the depth of his bitterness. He couldn't accept that Tiffany had chosen to move on, and in his anger, he made threats that would soon escalate into something far more dangerous. "I'll go back to prison," he said, his words dripping with malice. He wasn't simply angry about the divorce, it was the new marriage, the life that Tiffany was building without him, that pushed him over the edge. He threatened deadly consequences, vowing to take matters into his own hands if she didn't reverse her decisions. His words were not empty. They were the first warning signs of a man who had become dangerously obsessed with control, a man willing to destroy everything in his path to maintain his grip on her life. Tiffany, shaken by the threats, began to understand that moving forward with her life came at a cost. She had thought the worst was behind her, but as Armand's anger continued to simmer, it became clear that this was a man who could never let go of the past. Tiffany, though determined to remain strong, found herself caught between her desire for a peaceful future and the relentless fear of what Armand might do next. October 7, 2023, started like any other day for Tiffany Wade. She took her son to the local barber shop for a routine haircut, something that seemed as ordinary as any other errand a mother might run. But Tiffany had no idea that this seemingly mundane moment would be her last. What she didn't know was that, just moments behind her, her ex-husband, Armand Hilton, was following her. His rage, which had been building for months, had finally reached a dangerous boiling point. Armand had been consumed by anger, his mind fixated on the perceived betrayal from his ex-wife, her divorce, her remarriage, the life she was now building without him. That anger, once a whisper, had grown into a full-blown obsession. He had been threatening her for months, but on this particular day, he decided to take matters into his own hands. Armand, in a hoodie and mask, approached the barber shop quietly, blending into the crowd, a figure of hidden fury. There were no words exchanged. He didn't need to say anything, his actions spoke for him. Without warning, he pulled out a gun and fired. The first shot struck Tiffany in the torso, the force of it knocking her off balance. Before she could react, he fired again, this time, point-blank into her head. In the blink of an eye, Tiffany Wade's life was taken. In broad daylight, on a busy street, a mother was gunned down in cold blood. Armand didn't care who saw him, he didn't care who would suffer. His rage was all that mattered. Tiffany, a woman who had done everything to protect her children, was left lying on the floor, unresponsive. By the time the police arrived, it was too late. Tiffany was pronounced dead. The brutal murder of Tiffany Wade sent shockwaves through the community. For those who knew her, it was a loss that could hardly be comprehended. Tiffany was more than just a mother, she was a pillar of strength, a woman whose love and faith had touched so many lives. Her children were now left without their mother, and the ripple effect of her death would be felt far beyond the walls of the barber shop. The community that had once supported Tiffany was now left to pick up the pieces. In the midst of their grief, there was a shared sense of outrage. How could someone so deeply loved, someone so full of promise and life, be taken in such a violent and senseless act? And how could a man, who once vowed to love and protect her, now be the one to destroy her? Within hours of Tiffany's tragic death, the police began their investigation, quickly identifying Armand Hilton as the prime suspect. His violent criminal history, coupled with the threats he had made against Tiffany in the months leading up to the murder, made him an obvious target for authorities. His obsession with revenge and the escalating danger he posed were clear to anyone who knew him. Yet despite the overwhelming evidence and the swift mobilization of law enforcement, Armand remained elusive. A widespread manhunt was launched, and a $20,000 reward was offered for any information that could lead to his capture. But as days turned into weeks, Armand continued to evade capture. The frustration and fear grew as the man responsible for Tiffany's death remained at large, a constant threat to the safety of the community. Tiffany's death left a gaping hole in the lives of those who loved her. She wasn't just a victim of violence, she was a mother, a sister, a businesswoman, and a pillar of strength. The impact of her loss reverberated far beyond her family. Her children, now without their mother, faced a future uncertain and forever changed. The young lives she had worked so hard to protect and nurture were left to navigate the world without her guidance and care. The community, too, was left to mourn. Tiffany had been a woman who gave back, who cared deeply for others and lived a life defined by generosity and faith. Her passing was felt deeply by all who knew her, friends, colleagues, and strangers alike. The neighborhood that had once embraced her now found itself grieving a woman of substance, taken far too soon. This case raises difficult questions that have sparked debate not only in the community but also within the broader criminal justice system. Should repeat offenders like Armand Hilton, who have shown a consistent pattern of violent behavior, face more stringent monitoring after their release from prison? If someone like Armand had been more closely monitored, could Tiffany's death have been prevented? And perhaps most poignantly, was Tiffany's decision to move forward with her life after the divorce the right one? Could she have foreseen the danger that would ultimately lead to her tragic end? These questions are not easy to answer. While Tiffany's choices, her decision to divorce Armand, to remarry, and to move on with her life, were personal and made in the hope of creating a safer and better future for herself and her children, they were also made in the face of unpredictable violence. It's impossible to say whether Tiffany could have fully understood the extent of the threat Armand posed, but the tragedy of her death forces us to reckon with these difficult realities. Some argue that Tiffany should have reported Armand's threats earlier, that she should have acted faster to protect herself and her family. Others suggest that she might have prevented further conflict by returning the properties she had kept after their divorce, in an effort to avoid inflaming his anger further. But these perspectives raise another uncomfortable truth: no crime is ever the fault of the victim. Tiffany did what she thought was best, she worked hard to protect her children and move forward with her life. The decisions she made were those of someone who was determined to survive and thrive after years of hardship. Tiffany Wade's tragic death serves as a painful reminder of the dangers that can arise from unresolved anger and violent tendencies. What started as a broken marriage escalated into something far darker, with the devastating consequences of unchecked rage. Tiffany, a woman who tried to build a better life for herself and her children, became another victim of a cycle of violence that many tried to ignore. Her death is a stark warning about the reality of domestic violence and the unpredictability of those who harbor deep resentment. This is not just Tiffany's story, this is a story that could belong to anyone. Violence often comes from unexpected places, and it is a wake-up call for all of us to consider the justice system's role in preventing such tragedies. Are we doing enough to protect victims of domestic violence and keep track of those who have repeatedly shown a propensity for violence? Tiffany's story forces us to reflect on these questions and demand a better, more protective environment for those who find themselves trapped in dangerous situations. As we remember Tiffany Wade, we honor the legacy of a woman who worked tirelessly, loved deeply, and lived faithfully. A woman who put family above all else, who took pride in her work, and who was fiercely dedicated to her faith. While her life was tragically cut short, the impact she had on those around her will never be forgotten. Her tragic loss is felt by many, and the pain of her absence will continue to echo throughout the lives of her children, her family, and her community. Justice for Tiffany has yet to be served, and as we continue to seek answers, we also stand in solidarity with her loved ones, hoping that her story will bring attention to the important issues of domestic violence, accountability, and justice. As we reflect on Tiffany Wade's life and the tragedy that took it, we're left with many questions about justice, safety, and how we can better protect those who are vulnerable to violence. What are your thoughts on this case? Should there be tougher rules for repeat offenders, particularly those with a violent history? How can the justice system better serve victims of domestic violence and ensure that tragedies like Tiffany's are prevented? We want to hear from you. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, as we continue to explore these important issues together. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more true crime documentaries that shed light on the stories that matter. Your support helps bring awareness to these crucial conversations.